Okay, so just a quick backstory on why I'm doing this. If you want to skip this intro, you can just look at the chapters below and just skip to the actual ranking of the mascots. But last year for the playoffs, my friends and I decided that we would pick who won each playoff game based on who had the hottest coach. And that's trademark, so you can't take the hottest coach TM, sorry. And so each game in our group message, one of my friends would send pictures of both of the coaches for those games, and we would decide as a group which of them we thought was the hottest. Now, we wanted to reprise that this year in some way, but we realized the hottest coach did have some flaws because, as you all know, Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs won. Now, no offense to Andy Reid, but he is definitely not the hottest coach. And so there had to be some kind of flaw. So I thought for this year, maybe we could do either best mascot, hottest QB, best team colors. We decided to do cutest mascot. But then I realized there's another issue. Again, taking the Kansas City Chiefs, that they won the Super Bowl and their creepy, cross-eyed wolf bandicoot mascot is definitely not the hottest by any stretch of the imagination. And we know who their quarterback is, which again, no offense, but Patrick Mahomes is not hot. So I realized that there was a flaw in this reasoning, or the Chiefs were just an anomaly. So to make it more accurate, instead of just doing the cutest mascot, we decided to make it a little more scientific and go into a bunch of different factors. So what mascot has the most swag, which mascot could beat up the other in a fight, who's also the cutest mascot, who has the best history, all these factors together to make it more likely that we will pick the correct winner of the Super Bowl this year. So stay tuned for that journey, but that's a little bit of backstory about why we're doing it. Hello, analysts. We're here today to talk about who we think is going to win this final wildcard game based off of who has the best mascot between the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams. And so I'm sitting off to the side because I'm going to be including pictures over here throughout of the different mascots to help prove my point today. And I know that we're getting started a little bit late because we decided last minute to do this. So if you want me to go back and do the other 5 teams in the wild card matchup, I will. And if you do make any bets based on my opinions and you lose money, it is not my fault. But if you do win money, I do have a right to some of the shares, and that's just the rules. So today we have a big task ahead of us to decide who is going to be winning this game based on the best mascot. So we'll jump right in. Let's start with the Minnesota Vikings. So their mascot is known as Viktor the Viking. Viktor with a K, very Viking-esque. But we're not going to start there because we first have to go back in history. We have to see where Viktor came from and where he is now, because that has a huge impact. People's history determines who you are now. So we'll have to look through the history of the Viking mascots before we kind of settle on Viktor right now. So looking back in history, the Vikings started with a real person as a mascot, and his name was Hub Meads. So Hub Meads, it turns out, was just a random person who was at the Super Bowl game with his brother, and he was dressed up in Vikings gear like a Viking, and the security literally thought he was part of the team, so they just let him on the field. And he just asked, hey, can I be your mascot? And has been their mascot was their mascot, he stopped in the early 90s, but was the Vikings mascot for 20 years. I know. Insanity. That story alone is pretty legendary. I'm not sure why he was named Hub Meads. I think Mead because of the, drink, old school drink, but that's neither here nor there. So he started off with Hub Meads, a pretty great story. From there, when he officially retired, their next mascot was Ragnar, also a real man dressed as a Viking, and Ragnar based on Ragnarok, which I believe in Norse mythology was like an actual battle that included the Norse gods and Vikings and whatever else. So Ragnar. Don't really have a lot of information on him, not super important. We don't want to spend too much time on these old folks, but another real guy. Then things got weird. Then they had a mascot named Vicodontus Rex. You heard me right. Vicodontus Rex. Now this was a dark spot in the Viking franchise, and I think all of them knew that. And so he was quickly discontinued as a mascot because they didn't want a worse looking Barney as their mascot, which makes a lot of sense. And now we have Viktor. So just looking at a poll that I found from a random site, this wasn't obviously all the Vikings fans, it was about 1,000 of them, but as we can see, Hub Meads and Ragnar were very high, very popular in the votes, both at 40%. Next, well, very last was Vikadontis, which makes sense. But then we see that Viktor, the current mascot, was pretty low, winning only 12% of the votes. Now that to me is somewhat telling. So amongst the fans, there maybe is not as much love as there could be. And so let's get into Viktor, who he is and his story. So right off the bat is he's very on brand with their team. It's a Viking. He looks exactly like their logo. So in that sense, they win a lot of points there. And one of the things I do enjoy a lot about Viktor is that he seems to have his finger on the pulse, that he really is engaged with the different seasons, the different happenings that are going on. And he does that with his costumes. Now, typically, we see a lot of the mascots just wear the same costumes. Maybe they'll change the colors for home games, away games, but they're not really getting creative with it, all except Viktor. So what we see for the London game is we know that there are a lot of teams that play in different countries, Germany, London, Ireland. Well, I think Ireland could have been college football, but anyway. So they played in London at one point, and we see him dressed up as one of those guards I don't know the name of, but a very amazing costume, very cute, very, again, with the times. And then he's very much into all the different holidays that go on. So here he is in a Christmas outfit, switching it up for that season. On his Instagram, you can also find him in an outfit for Valentine's Day, where he has a quirky caption down below about, call him Viktor, call him whatever, just call him. And then we see this was likely around the release of Beetlejuice. We see Viktor dressed up as Beetlejuice and the caption, Viktor, 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 with a little ghost around it. So I love the cute antics outside of the game. It's very fun. It kind of endears us to him. So I do love that aspect about Viktor that we don't really ever see with other mascots. So in that sense, Viktor is doing really well. So we have a good sense of Viktor. We're going to move on now to the Rams mascot. His name is Rampage. And right off the bat, love it. Rampage the Ram. It is great that they worked in Ram into the name. Ingenious. And it's just kind of a name that instills some fear. Rampage, it's very aggressive. So we like that he's coming right out the bat, being aggressive, and he is a cute mascot. Very cute ram, and it's just very well done. Looks a lot like what you'd expect a ram to look like too. So in that sense, he's already doing really well. Same with him, we want to go back to history though. I wasn't able to find a whole lot on their past mascots. It was unclear to me. It seemed like they really only had one other past mascots. Some sources say they had this past mascot until the early 2000s, but don't mention anything before Rampage. So we're just gonna assume that they only had two. And so the first one that they had was named Ramster. Now, Ramster was horrifying. And he was similarly discontinued pretty quickly because of how horrifying he was. I don't know who approved this, but they decided that he would be a mix of like a ram and a hamster, and they would call him Hamster. Makes no sense to me. Thankfully, they got their heads straight and decided to discontinue. But as we know from the Vikings franchise with Vikadontis, they also had a mishap too. So we can't quite hold that against the Rams. If we compare their two mishaps, Vikadontis is a little bit worse. And so going forward with the Rams, of course, we had to do research, which involved looking into their Instagram page. And so with Rampage, again, very active on his socials, doesn't do as much of the dressing up, which again, like I said, it's pretty rare for mascots to do this. This was something that Viktor is very innovative in that sense. But what we do see, something that I like that I don't see a lot of mascots doing that Rampage does, as we know, when the NFL stars, when they're coming in for their game, they have this walk-in, kind of like a fashion show, where you see all these pictures where they're wearing insane outfits and you're wondering why they look like that. And there's always one that is no effort. They just have a hoodie from their team and some sweatpants. And so what we see is that Rampage actually dresses up each game kind of like he's doing this walkthrough and does it with a team. And that really shows to me that he understands he is a vital member of their team. Typically, we don't see the mascot anywhere to be found during this walk-in, but he knows I'm a part of this team as well, that I'm part of the reason why this team can have success. And I love that team spirit from Rampage. So that's a big one for me. However, one thing that I really think took Rampage to another level is I was scrolling through his Instagram and I was stopped in my tracks when I saw this image. And you might be wondering, okay, that does look familiar to me. I can't quite place it though. But suddenly you hear in the background and it all comes to you. Kendrick Lamar. That's right. Kendrick Lamar. And the caption talks about squabble up, that he's ready to squabble on Sunday. I mean, I don't know what game that was for, but they had to have won it. The adjectives that I would use to describe that Instagram post, I would say crazy, scary, spooky, hilarious, all in one. And so with that, Rampage earned a lot of points. And so right now they're pretty neck and neck for me. There's a lot of great attributes about these mascots and truly becoming some of my favorite mascots in the league with some of the research that I was doing. And so I didn't just want to rely on my own opinions because of course I can be biased and have my own interpretations. I wanted to look and see what some of the experts were saying. So I found an article from USA Today that ranked all the different mascots. Now, not all teams have mascots. There are 4 who don't have any, which makes no sense. I mean, one of them is Green Bay, who, what are we doing? You're in the playoffs. You had to have a mascot. So anyway, that's for another time. But we see in the rankings, they ranked it from the worst to the best. So the higher numbers are worst, the lower numbers are best. We see that Rampage makes his appearance at number 11. Pretty strong, more than halfway. So he's in the top 45% of mascots. Pretty strong showing. And at the bottom, they even say that they think that Rampage can take another mascot in a fight. This is interesting because that is one of the things that we are focusing on today. Can he take Viktor in a fight? So this is a strong point in his favor. But later what we see is Viktor ranked all the way up at number 4. Top 5 of mascots. Now that is a hard place to get into. And they said that Viktor, the Viking, is so perfect that it almost makes them forget about the horrible things that all the Norse Vikings did. Now that is a strong statement as well, because the Vikings did some pretty horrible things. And so objectively, we see Viktor winning. But I'm not 100% convinced. Right now, they are still very much tied to me. And so with that, I have to go with my gut and just who I simply like more and who's cutest. And so with that, my pick to win the 2025 final wildcard game of the season would be Rampage and the Los Angeles Rams. I think being in Inglewood at SoFi Stadium, he is ready to squabble up with the best of them. So go Rams. But for those of you that may have favored the Vikings in this, I thought it would still be interesting because we decided this year to go with the cutest mascot to still see what would have been if we picked the hottest QB. And so I thought just for fun, we'll enter into the match Sam Darnold and Matthew Stafford. We'll start with Sam Darnold. It was pretty difficult, I'm not gonna lie, to find a good picture of him, respectfully. And so with Sam Darnold, this is what we have. I mean, pretty standard, nothing much to say, somewhat bland, great football player. I mean, he's in the NFL, but we don't really have much to go on there. So let's switch over to Matthew Stafford. We might have a little more information. Right off the bat, I mean, he's gonna be my winner. I mean, that's kind of obvious, you know? But let's just be honest. These two men look the same. And I said this a lot, but we need to talk about more the pandemic that is white men that look the exact same. I mean, and some of you might think that these men don't look the same at all. Like Sam Darnold is just a paler and ginger version of Matthew Stafford. But the thing here that I think doesn't make Stafford win out as much as he could is his inconsistency. And so there are some points where he is much hotter and some points where he is much uglier. But Sam Darnold stays consistent throughout, consistently not hot throughout. But with Matthew Stafford, for instance, we have him kind of regular, what he looks like now, where he's, fine, but without a hat, hotness does increase, right? But we see also without the beard that we typically know is men's makeup, that the hotness significantly decreases. And so we have a quarterback that is inconsistent, and that is exactly what you don't want from a quarterback, a lack of consistency. And so although he is going to win out the hottest QB match as well, I would say that this one is somewhat on shaky ground. So I'm going to go with the Rams for this one, but it's not super decisive as I did like Viktor as well. And I know that, maybe you have some of your own thoughts and opinions, so I would love you to share and let me know your own thoughts of this. I could be biased in some of my interpretations, and so give me your thoughts, and we'll see. Thank you for spending your time with me today, and we will do some continued analysis as this season goes on.